I want you to picture a really specific moment. It's, let's say it's 4 p.m. on a Friday.
Oh, no. I already know where this is going.
Right. A major project deadline is an hour away, and suddenly the main server just completely crashes. Or maybe a huge client calls and threatens to pull their entire account over some tiny typo.
Yep, the classic corporate meltdown. We have all been there.
Exactly.
Mhm.
The room instantly turns into this, like a disaster movie. You've got people screaming, people pointing fingers, and there's always that one person who is just spiraling into a full-blown panic attack.
Usually the loudest person in the room.
Right. But here's the thing I really want you to focus on today. If you look carefully in the middle of all that noise, there is almost always one person who isn't screaming.
Mm-hmm.
They aren't running around. They've actually gone completely quiet. They take a literal step back from the group, and they look, well, they don't look calm exactly.
No, calm isn't the right word.
It's more like they look heavy, like they are physically absorbing the gravity of the situation so that everyone else in the room doesn't just float away into space.
You've just described a very, very specific type of energy. And it's important to note, it's not passivity. It's containment.
Yes,
Yeah.
containment. And that is exactly what we are unpacking in today's deep dive. We're looking at the Max Energy ME80 Personality Assessment System.
Which is such a fascinating framework.
It really is, because usually, when people talk about personality tests, they think, oh, I'm an introvert, or I'm a judger, or a visionary. But the ME80 system is totally different. It looks at people as energy architectures.
Right, it's a mechanical view of human behavior.
Exactly. And today, we're focusing on one specific architecture that I personally think is the absolute unsung hero of the modern world. It's called the SAAN profile, also known as the pressure bearer.
A pressure bearer. It's such a heavy title, but so accurate. And honestly, if you're listening to this right now and you constantly feel like you're the one fixing everyone else's messes
Without getting any credit.
without getting any credit, yeah, this deep dive might feel a little bit like therapy for you.
I have a feeling a lot of our listeners are going to feel very seen today. So let's just start with the basics. The ME80 system, like we said, it isn't just about static traits.
No, not at all. Think of it less like a horoscope and more like a blueprint for a complex machine.
Okay.
Every machine has an operating system, and the ME80 system breaks down exactly how you process energy, specifically how you take in stress, how you compute decisions under pressure, and how you push energy back out into the world.
And the AM profile is totally unique here, right?
It is, because their entire internal system is built for one primary function, and that is resilience.
So in the report, it defines the SAAN pressure bearer with this, I just love this phrase. It says their core identity is holding the line from the sidelines.
It's very evocative.
It is. But I have to admit, when I first read it, I was a little confused because usually we think of the hero or the strong person as the one on the front lines, right? Charging into battle with a sword. How exactly do you hold the line from the sidelines?
That right there is the central paradox of this personality. And it is a crucial distinction to make. If you have, say, a warrior-type personality, when a crisis hits, you charge forward. You attack the problem head-on.
Right. You fight the fire.
Exactly. But the pressure bearer does something that looks totally counterintuitive to the rest of us. Their very first instinct is to take a step back.
See, to me, stepping back sounds a lot like retreating, like they're checking out or avoiding the problem.
Right. It looks exactly like that from the outside. But internally, it's a highly strategic maneuver. Imagine a structural engineer who's standing inside a building when a massive earthquake hits.
Okay.
If they run around screaming, they're useless.
Right.
If they run out the front door and flee, the building might collapse on everyone else.
So what do?
They step back to look at the whole structure. They're instantly looking for the load-bearing walls. They're trying to figure out where the stress points are. They're rapidly assessing what the report calls the global view.
Ah, okay. That makes a lot of sense. So they aren't disengaging at all. They are actually zooming out.
Precisely. They are trying to create what the ME80 framework calls survival space. They realize that if everyone is down in the trenches panicking, someone has to be up on the ridge looking at the map.
So their goal isn't really to win the fight.
No. Their primary goal is system preservation. They just want to make sure the entire operation doesn't collapse.
That actually leads perfectly into what the report calls their control mechanism. It talks about boundary endurance and this global vision. I really love this idea of endurance being a form of control. Because normally when we hear the word control, we think of dominance.
Right, like a boss barking orders, sit down, shut up, do this right now.
Exactly. But this is different.
Very different. The pressure bearer doesn't actually want to dominate you. They want to stabilize you. Their whole philosophy of control is about absorbing the shock waves that would otherwise completely destroy the team.
They're acting like a buffer.
Exactly. They are constantly in their heads calculating the cost of conflict.
The cost of conflict. You mean like, is this argument really worth my time today?
Yes. Way deeper than that. They understand that if a conflict fully explodes, say the boss actually fires the client in a rage, or the whole engineering team walks out there, the system fails.
Total destruction.
Right. The cost is incalculable.
Mm-hmm.
So the pressure bearer makes this split-second, often completely subconscious calculation. They say to themselves, the system cannot handle this shock right now. Therefore, I will become the shock absorber.
Wow.
I will stand right in the middle. I will take the hit, and I will keep things running.
I mean, that sounds incredibly noble, but it also sounds totally exhausting. It's almost like there are these human containment fields for everyone else's drama.
Human containment field is actually a perfect way to put it. But you can't just decide to wake up one day and be a containment field. You actually have to be built for it.
Right. If I tried to do that, I would just end up crying in the supply closet.
Exactly. Most people would.
Mm.
The SAN can do it because of how their specific energy matrix is wired.
Okay, let's get under the hood then. This is the part of the Max Energy report that I really loved because it geeks out on the actual mechanics of the personality. They break the energy matrix down into 4 layers.
IP, IQ, EQ, and manifestation.
Yeah, it's literally like looking at the schematics of a high-performance vehicle.
Or the blueprints of a fortress. Let's actually stick with that building metaphor from earlier. Works really well here.
Perfect. So let's start at the very bottom. The IP layer, which stands for the inner value layer. For the SAN profile, this is defined as stable accumulation activation. Now, accumulation sort of sounds like hoarding. Are they hoarding stuff?
Not stuff, no. They are accumulating gravity.
Gravity.
Yeah. Think of the IP layer as the deepest foundation of the building, the concrete that's poured way down underground. Stable accumulation means their core self is heavy, solid, and incredibly immovable.
So they aren't flighty people.
Not at all. They don't change their core values based on whatever the trend is this week. They're constantly gathering resources, gathering strength, gathering knowledge, all to build stability.
So that when the storm actually hits, the foundation holds.
Exactly. They are the bedrock.
That makes total sense why people naturally lean on them in a crisis. You want to stand on solid ground.
Okay, so moving up a level to the IQ layer, this is the emotional activation layer. This is basically how they react when the trigger is pulled, right? Like when the crisis actually happens.
Correct. The IQ layer is your immediate processing unit. And for the Psi, this layer is defined as structure and principle judgment.
Structure and principle. I have to say, that sounds a little robotic.
It can definitely seem that way, especially to highly emotional people. But think about it logistically. If you are the bedrock of the group, you cannot afford to react with raw, wild emotion.
Because if the foundation shakes, the whole house comes down.
Exactly. So when chaos hits, the SAN doesn't immediately get angry. They don't immediately start crying. They get structural. They actively look for logic and principles to contain the panic. So while I'm running around the office, freaking out, going, oh my God, we're all going to get fired, the SAN is quietly thinking, okay, step 1, check the backup server logs. Step 2, call the vendor.
Yes. They use structure to essentially put a heavy lid on the chaos. They are organizing the panic into a rational to-do list.
Which brings us to the next level up, the EQ layer, the decision calculation layer. And I think this is where people misunderstand the pressure bearer the most. The report defines this layer as emotional detachment and understanding.
Detachment. It's also a dirty word in our culture right now.
Right, because we're all told we need to be vulnerable all the time, be empathetic, feel all the feelings.
But the fan's ultimate superpower is actually their ability to turn the emotional volume down.
But doesn't that come across as cold? If I'm really upset about something and you're just attached, I'm going to feel like you don't care about me at all.
That is the most common misconception about them.
Yeah.
Let me give you another analogy. Imagine a trauma surgeon in an ER.
Okay.
A patient comes in through the doors, badly injured, bleeding out. If that surgeon is fully tapped into their empathy in that exact moment, if they're crying, shaking, thinking about how sad the patient's family is going to be.
They can't do their job.
Exactly. They literally cannot hold the scalpel steady.
Right.
To save the person's life, they must detach. The SN and pressure bearer feels the emotions. The report specifies they have understanding. They know everyone around them is terrified.
But they choose to set it aside.
Yes. They have this internal mechanism to take their own feelings, put them in a box, and make the hard, cold decisions that survival requires.
Wow, okay, that really shifts the perspective. It's not that they lack feelings at all, it's that they are actively prioritizing the survival of the system over their own immediate emotional comfort.
Precisely. They take the emotional hit so the surgeon can operate, so to speak.
Mhm.
They compartmentalize for the greater good of the group.
So, recap. We've got this incredibly heavy foundation. We've got a structured, logical reaction to triggers and a detached clinical decision-making process. That all sounds very internal, just holding a massive amount of pressure inside.
But then we get to the top layer.
The manifestation layer, and this is the part that really surprised me.
The report calls this energy released outward, impact, action, manifestation. This is exactly why they are called pressure bearers and not just pressure absorbers.
They don't just sit there and take it.
No, they take all that chaotic energy, process it through their structure and their detachment, and then boom, they execute.
They actually get things done.
They are incredibly high impact. When a SAAN finally moves into action, it is never a frantic scramble. It is a heavy, decisive strike. They are the ones who actually fix the server. They smooth over the angry client. They get the contract signed.
They take all that internal pressure and turn it into external results.
They are the anchor and the hammer.
That is such a powerful combination. But, and here's where I think we need to get real for a second, there is a serious cost to this. You can't just be a human shock absorber for years without wearing down your own parts.
And this is where the Max Energy report gets a little heartbreaking, honestly. We really need to talk about their inner traits and specifically their internal monologue.
The report mentions this one specific question they constantly ask themselves when faced with the problem. Can the overall system still operate?
That is their primary filter for life.
Not, am I happy?
No.
Not, is this fair to me?
Never. It's always, can the system operate? And because they operate this way, they become the ultimate gap fillers.
Gap fillers.
They will walk into a room, naturally scan for risks, see a glaring hole in the project plan that everyone else completely missed, and they just go fix it. Quietly.
Without even being asked.
Without being asked, and very often without being thanked. They see a risk to the system, and they immediately view it as their personal responsibility to neutralize it.
The report has this line that really stuck with me. It says, to hold the line, they willingly place personal feelings last.
Yeah.
Willingly place personal feelings last. That hits really hard because it implies a level of self-sacrifice that borders on just erasing yourself.
It does. And this leads us directly into what the ME80 framework calls the shadow blind spot. Every personality profile has a weakness, a trap they fall into. For the pressure bearer, the report calls it internal friction.
Internal friction. I mean, going out to the machine metaphor, that sounds like an engine that's running without any oil. Eventually, it is going to seize up.
That is exactly what happens to them, because they're always fixing things quietly in the background, constantly playing the cleanup crew for other people's mistakes. They are prone to a very deep, very specific kind of burnout.
It's not just needing a nap.
No, it's not just I'm tired, it is my soul is tired. Occupational burnout on a structural level. But here's the real trap. And this is the part that I think is the most tragic about the SAAN profile. They are usually completely unable to flip the table.
Explain that, because if I'm severely burnt out and angry that I'm doing all the work, I am flipping the table. I'm quitting. I'm yelling. I'm making a scene. Why can't they?
Okay, imagine you are the mythological figure, Atlas. You're literally holding the sky on your shoulders.
Heavy.
Very heavy. Your shoulders are burning. You are furious that all the other gods are just down there partying and messing around while you do all the heavy lifting. You desperately want to drop the sky.
You want to let it crash.
You want to flip the table and let it all fall down just to prove a point, just to show them what you've been dealing with. But you can't.
Because if you drop the sky, it crushes everyone, including the people you care about.
Exactly. Their deep sense of structural responsibility holds them hostage. They see the problems with the system so clearly. They feel the total injustice of being the only responsible adult in the room, but they are forced to yield.
They delay the collapse.
They delay it because they simply cannot bear the guilt of letting the system fail on their watch.
Man, that sounds incredibly lonely. It's like you are trapped by your own competence.
It is lonely, and it leads to a massive erosion of trust over time. As the years go by, the pressure bearer just stops believing that anyone else can or will help them.
They just assume they have to do it all.
They look around and think, well, if I stop, this whole company ends. No one else here is strong enough to hold this. So they retreat even further into silence. They become an island.
Which bleeds right into their social relationships, doesn't it? The report refers to them socially as the hidden buffer. How do their friends and colleagues actually see them?
It's definitely a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
To their colleagues, the SAAN is the never-failing guardian of order. They are the ultimate safety net. When the SAAN is in the room, everyone else subconsciously relaxes.
Because they know Dave is here, nothing bad is going to happen. Dave will handle it.
Exactly. But the report notes that because of this, they carry an indefinable heaviness.
An indefinable heaviness, like they are walking through water while everyone else gets to walk through air.
Yes, and here is the real kicker. Because they resolve all these impacts quietly, from behind the scenes, usually before the problem ever becomes a public crisis,
People forget about them.
people completely forget their value during peacetime.
That is such a crucial point. If you prevent the fire from ever starting, no one gives you a medal for putting it out. They just think, wow, what a lucky fire-free day we magically had.
Exactly. The ultimate tragedy of their competence is invisibility. They are really only remembered when the emergency siren starts ringing. In the calm moments, they are often overlooked.
Or maybe even seen as a bit boring.
Yes, boring or rigid, because they aren't the ones creating the fun drama or the loud visionary ideas. They are just holding the line.
Wow. I feel like I need to go buy a very expensive drink for a few people in my life right now.
We all know one.
We do. But let's pivot a bit to where this personality type actually gets to shine. Because despite the heavy emotional toll we just talked about, they are incredibly valuable in the business world. The report calls them organizational shock absorbers.
It really is the perfect business metaphor. In almost any mid to large company, you have strategy at the very top, and you have execution at the bottom.
And a lot of chaos in between.
Tons of chaos. Strategy is often messy, it's abstract, it's high pressure, and a lot of times it's completely unrealistic. The pressure bearer is the person who sits right in the middle.
They are the translation layer.
They take the crazy panic directive from upper management, the CEO screaming, we need to pivot and launch in 3 days. And instead of passing that pure panic down to the ground team, they absorb the shock.
They filter.
They translate it. They turn to the team and calmly say, okay, guys, here is the new plan. We're going to prioritize A, B, and C. They completely filter out the emotional noise so the team can actually just do the work.
And the report also mentions their risk-sensing abilities in business.
Oh, it is almost uncanny. They have this incredibly sharp sense of risk. They're the ones who spot the one vague sentence in a 50-page vendor contract that could get the company sued 3 years from now.
They fix the problems before the problems even have a name.
Exactly.
So if we have listeners out there who are nodding along right now thinking, oh my gosh, this is me, or maybe employers who are realizing they desperately need this kind of strength on their team, where do these people actually belong? What are the recommended career fields in the report?
Given their specific energy matrix, that rare mix of deep stability and high-impact execution, they really thrive in high-pressure environments where structure is severely needed.
Okay, so what's the first one?
First is organizational management, specifically middle management or high-pressure operations coordination. They are the glue that keeps different departments from essentially killing each other.
The people who actually make the trains run on time.
Exactly. Second is crisis management. This includes risk management, compliance, and auditing. Anywhere where you need someone to look at a terrifying, complex mess and say, okay, let's build a framework to fix this.
Because they don't panic, they just structure. I can totally see them as like air traffic controllers.
That is a perfect example. Third is complex execution. These are roles that require a lot of cross-level communication. They're amazing translators between the visionaries who only speak in abstract dreams and the doers who only speak in concrete tasks.
Right.
And finally, stability assurance. Basically, any job where the #1 primary requirement is simply do not let the system break.
Do not let this break. I feel like that should be the motto on their LinkedIn profiles.
It really should be.
Well, we are coming toward the end of this deep dive, and honestly, I have a massive amount of newfound respect for this profile. It's a profile of immense quiet strength, but obviously also immense silent struggle. So as we wrap this up, what is the big takeaway here? What do we do with all this information?
I think the absolute biggest takeaway is about recognition.
Okay.
If you are a pressure bearer listening to this, you need to realize that your ability to endure is a profound gift, but it shouldn't be a life sentence. You have to learn to let the system shake just a little bit sometimes.
You have to let other people carry some of the weight.
Yes. If you don't let them feel the weight, they will never learn how to carry it.
Yeah.
You cannot be the only responsible adult in the room forever. It will break you.
That is very scary advice for someone whose whole identity is control, but it's so necessary. And what about for the rest of us? The people who rely on the pressure bearers in our lives.
Stop taking their stability for granted.
Hmm.
Realize that the calm environment you get to enjoy is something they are actively, constantly manufacturing for you, usually at a high cost to themselves.
Yeah.
If you see someone in your office or your family who is always fine, always handling it, never complains, check on them, they're probably carrying significantly more than you think.
That is such a powerful perspective shift. And actually, the source material ends with a golden quote that I think sums this entire episode up perfectly. I'm going to read it verbatim because it's just really beautiful.
Go for it.
It says, "What pressure bearers truly need is not more weight, but to be clearly seen. Those moments without explosion are not luck, but them behind the scenes holding the world steady."
To be clearly seen. That really is the key. They don't need a parade. They don't want a big flashy award. They just want someone to look them in the eye and say, I see what you did there. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, listen, this entire analysis comes directly from the Max Energy ME80 Personality Assessment Report. It is such a fascinating system that really goes way beyond the surface level of normal personality tests.
It really does. It gives you the mechanics. It changes how you see your coworkers, your family, and definitely yourself.
It does. If you want to understand more about this energy system, or maybe find out if you are a pressure bearer yourself, or perhaps decode one of the other profiles, you can visit their official website at www.maxenergylife.com.
And you can also search for them on social media, which I highly recommend. Look for Max Energy MCO or MedEnergy MB on Facebook. There's a ton of depth there to explore.
Yes, definitely check that out. And to all the pressure bearers listening to us right now, we see you. We know you are holding it all together behind the scenes. Maybe take a minute today to just put the weight down, just for a second. The world is not going to end if you take a break.
You've definitely earned it.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.